The story starts with a man driving too fast and recklessly on a winding road with his wife sitting next to him. She is pleading with him, saying that he actually loves her, but he is actually physically disgusted with her. Then suddenly they come up to a parked truck, and he couldn't avoid it, and they crash into it, creating a giant explosion that blows up the car, killing them both. But sudden. The wife walks out of the flames like nothing happened, with only her clothes being burned. She wasn't actually human this whole time. We're in the city, inside of one of those high-rise office buildings where Norman Glass works at. He walks over to the receptionist and gives her a piece of paper to send out before he walks back to his office to find his friend Roy, who's looking through a magazine and planning a trip. He wants Norman to go with him and bring his other friend from accounting called Dennis. But Dennis is not here for vacation discussions. He is here for some paperwork from Roy. Roy keeps harping on about this beautiful woman that has recently lost her husband, Adie Sutton. She's actually there at the office to see Norman. She walks over to his office and walks inside without him being in there, and she starts looking at a photo of the woman on his table. She quickly transforms herself to look like the lady in the photo, just before he walked in. And as soon as he sees her, he is shaken by her beauty. A short time later, Norman and they are married and are celebrating their first anniversary with Dennis and Barbara, who are also celebrating their anniversary at the same time. They are reminiscing about their double wedding and laughing about all the things that happened on that day. Both the couples seem very happy with each other and can't seem to keep their hands off each other. Norman, in a whispering voice, tells Adie that even though she is the most beautiful woman in the world to him, that opinion will not change regardless of time or what she looks like, because he loves her no matter what. They have a toast together before the evening ends. That night, Norman and Adie are having an intimate night where Norman affirms his love for her, and they can't keep their hands off each other. At 3 a.m., Norman is woken up but can't find his wife anywhere. He goes downstairs to find her on the computer, typing something, and he decides to sneak up on her and give her a kiss, but he smells something revolting from her that he couldn't help but want to throw up. When she hears that the smell came from her, she runs upstairs and into the shower. She is distraught and can't keep herself from crying. Meanwhile, Norman walks in the bathroom to comfort her, but something catches his eye. When he looks into the mirror, he doesn't find the reflection of his beautiful wife. Rather, he sees a hideous monster in the mirror. He gets closer to check if what he sees is true, but when he wipes off the condensation, it returns to the real image. She finishes her shower and he is actually there to apologize for the words he used earlier, but that doesn't make her worries go away. In the morning, she has made him breakfast, but he is not hungry, and he dismisses her offer and just grabs some orange juice before giving her a kiss. But as soon as he steps out, he has an odd taste in his mouth from her. Later on, Norman is at the hospital. He is worried about himself because he tasted her being sour last night, but he can taste other things just fine. The doctor dismisses it, saying it's probably just nothing and he shouldn't worry about it, and sends him back home. Norman gets to his friend Dennis's house, but he finds out that Dennis has broken up with his wife and left her in the middle of the night. He checks the light, but the bulbs are all broken. Norman can't believe it because they were very happy with each other very recently. Dennis disappeared after acting crazy out of the blue. Norman leaves while Barbara watches on, but suddenly his wife Adie appears with concerns that this is already happening, implying that something is hidden between the two women. Barbara tells her that her mouse is next to run out on her, implying that their husbands are mouses. Later that night, Adie is taking good care of her husband as they get ready to watch a romantic movie. They can't stop talking about Dennis and Barbara. Adie is worried about how sudden all of this happened, and Norman can't believe it either because Dennis always said that he doesn't deserve a woman like Barbara. But after looking at her worried face, Norman tells her that he is never going to run out on her. But then Norman mentions kids, and that topic literally scares off his wife into wanting to go to bed. He wants to take the next step, but she doesn't seem to be ready to have a baby yet. As they prepare dinner, Norman goes to kiss her, but then gets the same disgusting taste as last time from Adie, and he quickly runs out of the room. At the office, Roy is trying to talk business with Norman, who is too busy worrying about what might be going on with him or his wife. He doesn't know exactly how to explain his predicament to Roy. All he can say is that something is there that disgusts him about his wife, and it only happens for a split second. The things he says only confuses Roy, who decides to walk out, but then he gets a call from Dennis, who tells him that something is after him. At the house, Addie and Barbara are talking about making the change, and Barbara changes her shape into new people, trying to find a new look to go for. It is clear that they are not human, only looking to trick vulnerable men into falling in love with them, but the reason for it all is still unknown. Barbara wants Addie to move on too, but she's not ready to give up on Norman yet. Barbara warns her that it isn't about playing the part perfectly, because one way or another the truth will come out about who they really are. Norman is in the park and finds a very distressed Dennis, who is very glad to see his friend. Dennis wants to disappear because he can't escape Barbara, but that's not her real name. He can't seem to shake her off because she keeps showing up wherever he goes, but they're safe at the park because she hates kids and they act as a kind of repellent, whatever Barbara is. Norman tries to convince him to go back home, but then Dennis tells him about the night he left, that his wife is actually a hideous monster that smells and tastes awful. But she shows up at the park, taking one of her other looks. Dennis asks her to stay away, and Norman is confused, and Dennis just runs away into the street and gets run over by a car that kills him. That's when Norman gets even more suspicious. At the funeral, Barbara is comforted by Addie and Norman. He tries to smell her, but she just dismisses it, saying that Dennis acted very deranged, and tells Norman that she's sure he did all he could to save his friend. Norman is still curious about his friend, but Barbara tries to dissuade him from looking for answers by saying it is better to focus on the present and future than dwell on the past. She then tells him that she's selling the house and moving somewhere else. That night in bed, Norman is still obsessed about the death of his friend. He is curious about how his wife seems to get even more and more perfect. Her features don't change in time, and before he starts to question further, she climbs on top of him and kisses him over and over, telling him she loves him, desperately trying to keep him. She convinces him to get into some role play, and he even gets into it, but then she accidentally lets herself go and he feels it on her back. He is disgusted by what he saw and felt. She tries to convince him that she is still her, but he doesn't believe her. Norman goes back to the doctor, explaining that he felt something slimy on his wife's back that quickly disappeared. The doctor thinks it is a psychological issue and that it is all happening in his head, called hysterical blindness. People think their senses are failing when there is actually nothing physiologically wrong with them. Norman tries to find the reason behind it and thinks he is harboring some guilt after Addie's previous divorce, that he thinks he has some part to play in it as he was the financial advisor of her ex-husband. The doctor tells him it is all in his head and not to blame himself for something he has no involvement in. That night, Norman makes it home with flowers, trying to apologize to his wife, but he can't find her. He looks around in the dark and turns the light on to get startled with a surprise party with all his friends. As the party goes on, Norman is drinking some champagne, and even his doctor is here and can't stop raving about how wonderful his wife is. A random woman walks in and takes Addie away, but it is actually Barbara, and Norman recognizes her perfume. Norman is bothered by the party as he stands outside talking to Roy, because they have never had a party, or even anyone else over to their house except Dennis and Barbara. Norman is losing his mind with everything that is going on in his life. Something is going on here and he can't put his finger on it, and it's driving him mad. Back inside, Addie feels bad because Norman didn't seem to be enjoying himself. Roy then tells her that he's lucky because he has a woman that would do all of this for him, and he wishes that he can find something similar. That night, Norman can't keep inside anymore and tells her everything and apologizes because she is clearly perfect and he must be having some psychological issues. She then suggests a vacation, somewhere where he can go and relax. He then sits on the couch and opens the gift the new girl got him and finds a Russian nesting doll. But as he opens them up, he notices odd footsteps behind him. When he turns to look, he finally sees his wife for her true appearance, but then when he gets to her, she looks completely normal. He tries to convince himself that it's all in his head. He goes upstairs to apologize to her, but she seems fine. When Norman goes to turn on the light, it's broken just like in Dennis's house. She did it because she doesn't want him to see her true form. She can't control her appearance anymore because it has been a year, and she can't control his mind anymore since they have gotten too close. She wanted to believe in their love, but it is too good to be true. She finally shows him her true self, saying Barbara and her crashed on Earth and their ship was unable to start again. This hideous and disgusting creature wants him, and he can't get away. But then he wakes up while tied up to a stretcher being put in an ambulance. No one can see the true Shapi of AD except him. He screams and shouts that she's a monster, but the medics don't see it, so they just try to calm him down, resulting in everyone thinking he's gone crazy. As the episode ends, Adi is on a bridge, looking amazing, trying to reel in her next target, Roy.